I'm a big believer in doing what your heart loves. Like I was told, as a kid, that the dream of being a baseball player, you got to have a backup plan, and that's a crazy idea. But I was just so like, I was like, I want to be all in. I want to give it everything I have.
Life finds a way.
Life's not fair, is it?
Life moves pretty fast.
Life is a bank.
Busy living.
What we do in life?
Way of life.
Life is pain.
Choose life and life in proud. To live would be an awfully big adventure.
How about that? You found us again. Thank you so much for that. Welcome to the movie of your life with Richard Roeper. I want to bring in my co-host and producer, Jennifer Weigel.
Rich, today's guest is a 4-time All-Star. This is a first for Movie of Your Life. We've got a 2-time World Series champion, one of the most distinctive personalities of his generation of baseball players. Now he's one of the game's most entertaining broadcasters, and he's going to be returning to the Field of Dreams. That's right.
The Philadelphia Phillies
Swing and a miss. That ball is rough.
face off against the Minnesota Twins.
Byron on the move. He's got
The field is calling. MLB at Field of Dreams, live on Netflix.
Now, I want to talk about the movie Field of Dreams because I
Yes,
don't
sure.
think I've ever asked you this. What did you think of that movie?
I love that movie. It's really cool, the Field of Dreams game. I've actually been to the Field of Dreams before they even started doing the games years ago when they just built it as as an attraction. And I went with my nephew, who at the time was, I think, 10 or 11, and he had his Mark Burley jersey. And you could go and play games, on the actual Field of Dreams where they filmed the scenes with Kevin Costner and Ray Liotta and everybody. And it was really, really cool. I have some cool photos from that time where I'm, hitting fungos to the outfield. And of course, everybody walks out of the cornfield just like the players did. The interesting thing about that movie, Jennifer, is that it is batshit crazy. That movie's insane when you actually analyze what's going on. A farmer in Iowa starts hearing weird voices from the cornfield, decides that he's going to build a baseball field, and then some ghosts come out of the cornfield, and they're from the White Sox 1919 team mainly that threw the World Series. And Ray Liotta plays Shoeless Joe Jackson. Now, the late Ray Liotta is one of the great actors of all time. He kind of played Joe Jackson as a psychopath. He had the kind of crazy Ray Liotta laugh and was super intense and also didn't know what he was doing there. And then we go on this sojourn and we find James Earl Jones, and then we're hearing more voices.
They have reserved seats somewhere along one of the baselines, where they sat when they were children and cheered their heroes. And they'll watch the game, and it'll be as if they'd dipped themselves in magic waters. The memories will be so thick, they'll have to brush them away from their faces.
And then Amy Madigan,
Amazing and loyal wife.
is the loyal wife.
Yes.
There's a great town hall meeting where she tells the other townsfolk to shut up because they're going to they're going to build this thing. And then the daughter, I think is played by Gabby Hoffman, almost dies choking on a hot dog at one point. But it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it works, somehow works. And most of it, is really about, the Kevin Costner character and the bond with his father, that have a catch moment. So against all odds, there's never really a game until the very end of Field of Dreams. They're mostly just taking batting practice, and then they do kind of a scrimmagey type thing. I don't know necessarily. It's like, because a bunch of other dead baseball players come out of the cornfield. So now they have enough players, but they don't have like two teams. So like every other great baseball movie, the natural, Robert Redford is Roy Hobbs, and he hits the spectacular game-winning home run, and Randy Newman's beautiful score. It reaches a crescendo, and even in Bull Durham, there's a lot of baseball, and Major League, the underdogs, but they don't really play a baseball game, but it's still a love letter to the sport.
I think most men I know love Field of Dreams to a level more than the women I've spoken with or other humans. Because there's something about, like you said, that have a catch moment, the father-son wish to be able to have that moment, even though he didn't. And, I'm into the woo and the kind of fun, the fantasy, though, of this is even a little much for me.
Yeah, it's way out there. It was just it was just done really well. If it had, you know, and a lot of it was Costner, you know, in his prime. There's the All-American Gary Cooper, Jimmy Stewart, everyman. I do love it, and I love the games they do there. The White Sox have played there, and this year it's the Twins and the Phillies. And I think they haven't had it for 3 or 4 years because they were doing upgrades. Because it started off as this little amusement thing. You know, it was a working barn and house, and then there were bleachers for about 30 people, and then you could just pick up a bat and play. And now they're playing major league games there, so there's lights and structural support, and they wanted to put more fans out there and everything. So it's still the site, but it's not exactly the same modest cornfield and baseball park that we saw in Field of Dreams.
Because I guess there's a rule in Ghost Baseball. That if you leave the field at any point to become an elderly ghost and do the Heimlich maneuver, you can't return to the field. I love Field of Dreams. That should win Best Picture. Though they'll probably go with one of this year's. Here are the nominees.
You know, John Mulaney, on top of everything else, is one of the world's great film critics. We're doing this podcast in early August, Jen, and one of the great early August releases of all time was in 1993, The Fugitive. And they did that on purpose. They weren't dumping it. There were big movies that had come out, I think maybe Jurassic Park, and there was a strategy by the studio that worked, and it went on to make $400 million and multiple Oscar nominations. And John Mulaney does a whole thing about the final scene, one of the last scenes in The Fugitive, where Harrison Ford confronts the doctor.
Just switch the samples. And Dr. Nichols is like, ladies and gentlemen, my friend, Dr. Richard Kimball. What accent did that guy have, by the way? He goes, just switch the samples. And you doctored your research.
And, you know, I love that. And I think this is probably on purpose that Mulaney did this. It's not the Palmer House where that took place. It's the Chicago Hilton, then known as the Chicago Hilton in Towers. You and I've been to the Palmer House. It's a great historic, you know, beautiful lobby and everything. But every time I go by the Chicago Hilton, the Hilton Chicago, I think of that scene from The Fugitive, which, as I mentioned, I actually rewatched the other day because it came out in early August, and it's early August. So
It's a great film, too. Well, on that note, let's bring in our guest, our first Major League Baseball player for the movie of your life, Hunter Pence.
Thanks so much for joining us. We got the Field of Dreams game, the Phillies and the Twins. Now, we haven't had one in the last few years. Is that correct, right? It's been a few years since we've had a Field of Dreams game.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years since they've done the Field of Dreams game. It's always one of my favorite games to watch. It always, you know, it's just cool to bring Major League Baseball to, you know, parts of the country that don't get to see it. Obviously, the movie and kind of the magic of that and the memories and everything, and just the magic of the cornfields. It really is an honor to get to be a part of this moment in Major League Baseball.
It's such a cool moment, I think, right now for the game, Hunter. And for folks who don't know, this is the movie of your life with Richard Roeper, and Jen Weigel, my co-host, is going to jump in a couple of times here, Hunter. But one of the things I loved about you as a player is that the way you played the game, I always got the sense that you wouldn't have been that upset if the game went into extra innings just so you could keep playing. And I just love that you had that, you brought that love and passion for the game. Where did that come from? Did you have that growing up?
Yeah, Richard, I definitely think it's like somewhat intrinsic. I like loved it so much. It was almost, you know, borderline obsessed. And I just loved hitting, and I did. I thoroughly enjoyed the game, the struggle, the challenge of it. It's just, you know, a part of the ethos of who I am enjoys a challenge. And being a major league hitter, you have to be somewhat mental because you just get beat up a lot. You're meant to fail, and just trying to master myself through the game. And the craft of hitting was just something I really enjoyed. I loved every aspect of it. And it was just, my whole life as a kid growing up. I played every sport, but baseball was the one I always really took seriously and worked the hardest on.
You made such a graceful pivot, Hunter, into the broadcasting side of things. And I just want to applaud you for that because you're so, obviously your color commentary is real because you know exactly what's going on in the headspace of the player. And I'm just curious if you have any advice for young players that maybe have to make a pivot after they're not playing anymore to exercise those options the way you did so perfectly.
Well, Jen, thank you. That means a lot. It's very touching to hear that. I genuinely love broadcasting. I never thought that I would be a broadcaster when I was playing. I always kind of envisioned coach or something, but it just kind of happened, and synchronistically almost. And I think I got to give a lot of credit to my wife Alexis, who she loves production and was doing. And I'm a big believer in doing what your heart loves. Like I was told, as a kid, that the dream of being a baseball player, you got to have a backup plan, and that's a crazy idea. But I was just so like, I was like, I want to be all in. I want to give it everything I have. And with Lexi, she started her YouTube channel and had a camera in front of me. And so I got comfortable being on the camera. And then, the last 10 years of my career, I think I was kind of the game plan guy because, I love the chess match of baseball. And so I was always diving in and watching all the film and kind of coming up with, what ways you could have a plan against certain pitchers. And if they wanted the homework and wanted to cheat off of my paper, I was kind of giving that away to anyone on my team that wanted it. And some players don't want that much information. It gets in their way. So, but I think broadcasting is a bit of that. So if you're, and a lot of players you play with, they want to coach. So like whatever's in your heart, just do it and don't quit and go for it forward. Not only with baseball players that are playing the game, you might not make it as a major leaguer, but there's jobs in the front office if that's something you're passionate about. There's jobs in the broadcast booth, but you gotta take action, and you got to be willing to meet failure as something to learn from. You have to be willing to take no's and continue to push forward. Would be kind of my advice, Jen.
And Jen, the thing about Hunter, he started 162 games one season. Nobody does it anymore. Matt Olson, I think, is the guy that does it. But you were the first Giant since like Alvin Dark in 1954 to play all 162 games and start. And I love that passion. The game's on Netflix, and this is interesting too to me, Hunter, as a broadcaster and as a huge baseball fan, that we're now getting games on Netflix. We got the Home Run Derby on Netflix. I think it's a really cool thing. Some fans are like, oh, I can't. I go, there's a game on at all hours. I love that. I'm a lot older than you. I grew up in the era where the Cubs were on WGN. I was a White Sox fan. We were lucky if we could get a network. You had to put the rabbit ears on top of the roof of your house and stand there with tinfoil. And then you had the game of the week. One game on Saturdays. I love the fact that we can see all these games, but what do you think this does with the young players? Because there's so much more media scrutiny. The Home Run Derby is now this huge spectacle. We get the Futures game, all this stuff. What do you make of that, and how do you think that affects young players today?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge to block out kind of the noise, so to speak, for young players. But also, I think the game is kind of in one of its best states it's been in as far as like popularity and more access for young fans to see it in different ways and more access to their personalities. So there's a lot of opportunities, and these kids kind of grew up with social media in a totally different way than I grew up. There was no, Instagram, and there was no, and I think there's also even like just so much data out there and like so many people that have infinite different ideas on how to do baseball, which is a very difficult thing. We watch major league players and they all do it differently. And so then you could just get on, social media and find 10 different gurus to hitting, and they're going to all say kind of something different. So I think there is a challenge to like block out the noise, but there's also like tremendous amount of opportunity. And, the fact that Netflix is showcasing baseball in these beautiful 3 events this year, between opening night, Home Run Derby, and now the Field of Dreams game, it's an opportunity for a lot of people to get access to the game. Anyone that has any level of Netflix gets to watch this game, and who knows what kind of new fans we bring in, but it definitely is a challenge, but I think that with the challenge comes a great opportunity, and an opportunity for them. I think they've gotten kind of used to so much hype around a lot more things than we had back when I played.
The beautiful fantasy of Field of Dreams and how the players come out and there's this nostalgia of an era. I'm just curious, Hunter, if you could wave a magic wand and play with any player from the past that was sort of an idol that you researched, who would that player be? Who would you want to be on the Field of Dreams with?
Yeah, that is a really beautiful question, and it's immediately Pete Rose. Because I definitely, kind of saw a little bit of myself in him. He was the one that I wanted to emulate my game after, and he was Charlie Hustle, and he got that nickname because they were making fun of him. And a similar thing, when you're young and you're like hustling everywhere, you get made fun of as well. They called me Captain Intensity, and and I just took that as a badge of honor. I was like, well, if Charlie Hustle is going to become Charlie Hustle, and that's something we all loved him for, I shouldn't be embarrassed that I'm Captain Intensity. And it kind of just, my whole thing was about inclusiveness and bringing people together, whether, you like me or love me or whatever, I got your back no matter what. And it kind of slowly, brought everyone along. So for me, Pete Rose, the guy who played the game as hard as he could, he was so smart. I definitely, he signed a picture for me. He said, I like your hustle. And from the Hit King, that's pretty remarkable.
The Captain Intensity, by the way, is a lesser character in the Marvel universe. A lot of people don't know that, but there should be some.
I didn't know that either.
Now, Jen, I have to tell you about this, and I tell the audience about this too. Hunter had these, two-time World Series champion, multiple All-Stars. He had these amazing moments, and to this day, do people still talk to you about the famous physics miracle where your bat hit the ball 3 times? Was that 2012, I think?
2012 in a National League Championship Series, Game 7. It was kind of the game that the bat that broke it open against Joe Kelly, who won multiple World Series as well himself. A young Joe Kelly, very nasty 97-mile-an-hour sinker. And yes, people ask about it and the physics of it. And that was the first time they had the slow motion camera. So it was the first time it happened. I will say, when playoffs comes, all the bat companies come and they bring, their best wood. And I remember grabbing this particular bat and being like, I have never felt a harder bat than this one. Wow. And I like literally switched bats because I was like, this is so hard. And Joe Kelly definitely blew me up on that pitch. But I was like right on line with it. So it was a sinker running in, and the reason I think that happened is because of how hard that bat was, and it just wouldn't break. And so it kind of like, it felt like when in real time, like I lacrossed it. It felt like it rolled up my bat.
It's crazy.
But the physics of it is, in baseball, it can either go true up to center or left, and to right, it'll go true or slice, kind of like golf, right? So you can't really hit a slice to left in baseball. But because of the kind of lacrosse and the ball bouncing off the bat, it went left but sliced right. So Cosmo goes right, but the ball goes to his left. And this was kind of the bases loaded at bat that kind of broke the game open, and definitely was like a bit of an angels in the outfield type moment for sure.
Just yeah, absolutely. And that's just the great thing about baseball too. Steve Stone, who's a longtime broadcaster and a former, was with the Giants and the White Sox and Cubs and lots of other, won a Cy Young Award with the Orioles. But he talks about the fact that every game you have a chance of seeing something that has never happened before in the history of the game. We just saw that last week. Shohei Ohtani and Pete Crow Armstrong, the first 2 lefties to hit home runs to lead off a game against lefties in the history of baseball. And that's just, I love that kind of minutia, Hunter. What do you think of the ABS? What do you think of the the challenge system?
Oh, I love it. It's so fun to watch, and it's so fun, honestly, the dynamic of how everyone's gotten a lot better and come up with strategies as the season's gone on. And I feel like the hitters and the umpires are all learning the strike zone with a just kind of immediate response and accountability. And there's a bit of that challenge of how good are you at the ABS challenge, and how confident are you, what time do you want to use it. So there's just so many like dynamics that this adds to the game, and I think everyone's kind of been elevated because of it. So for me, and as a fan watching, it's fun to see the player have to have ownership of the strike zone, and have an opportunity, so that you can't just be like, the umpire really, we used to look at after every game, like, well, the umpire favored this team by 1.2 runs.
Yeah,
and the umpire favored, and now it's like, it's on you players. How good are you at the challenge system? So I love the opportunity to add another dynamic of skill to the players.
The Movie of Your Life podcast with Richard Roeper is brought to you by Wayfair Theaters. Wayfair Theaters has 2 locations, one in Highland Park, Illinois, and one in Payson, Utah. For all showtimes, go to wayfairtheaters.com. Not only do they show your blockbusters just around the block, but live events and even live comedy. Remember, wayfairtheaters.com. Click on events to find all those special and unique opportunities near you.
This is the movie of your life, so we have to ask Hunter Pence some movie questions. It's interesting when we talk to athletes, Hunter, it's one of 2 things usually. Like, They either love movies about their sport or it drives them nuts. I have a friend who is a former boxer and boxing coach, and he loves Raging Bull, but to him, Rocky's a cartoon because he's like, they'd be dead in the second round if they threw that many. Where do you stand when it comes to watching baseball movies?
Yeah, I watched a ton of them as a kid growing up. Love baseball movies. So I am a fan. I love all the takes and the loose ones, the Bull Durhams, the serious ones. The Natural was my favorite movie as a kid. Bull Durham as I became an adult. Obviously rewatched the Field of Dreams a couple times now that we're going to that I get the opportunity to be a part of the Field of Dreams game. And as an adult, man, it was emotional for me because it just reminded me of my childhood watching it, but then seeing it through my adult eyes and the new man that I've become was really special. And it really is the magic of the father and son. And, it's a family game. Baseball is about families, and it's a family atmosphere. And it's a bit of an orchestra, the season of a major league game. And even just each game is a bit of a symphony in and of itself. So like you said, like we could see something we've never seen before any day that you come out. But I love them. I do love baseball movies.
Is there a movie that people maybe mock you for loving, Hunter, that you don't care? You're like, I'm in it to win it, and I'm going to watch it all the way to the end.
Not particularly. And I'll be honest, like I actually don't watch a ton of movies. I'm more of a like TV show guy, and like fantasy shows are kind of my favorite when watching. But yeah, I guess like no one really made fun of me for any movies. No one's really out there picking on you for that. But if I had to say a movie that I really liked that maybe someone could make fun of me for, maybe Forrest Gump. I don't know. That was one of my favorites as a kid.
I could eat about 1.5 million of these. My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
Well, we talk about streaming series as well, so it's interesting. And I know you're a gamer, right, too? Is that why you're into kind of the fantasy shows? What are the streaming series that you just have to binge watch then?
Well, obviously we loved Game of Thrones, and I'm on the House of Dragon. I haven't watched the one last night, but I'm all the way caught up, so I'll have to watch that one tonight probably. But I love The Witcher. I love The Wheel of Time, which is not going to go any further. Was one of my favorites as well. So
I love The Witcher. I have a total guilty pleasure on The Witcher.
Stranger Things is another one that's like, obviously I love Stranger Things because I was a kid playing Dungeons and Dragons, so they remind me of myself a little bit.
You mentioned we've talked about Field of Dreams and The Natural, which I love too. And I'm sure you're the expert on this. When you see like Kevin Costner looked like he could play a little bit, right? And so does Robert Redford. Robert Redford actually way back in the day played a little ball for University of Colorado. And does that matter when you're watching it? If you see that they got at least a pretty decent swing, or I'll digress for a second. There was a movie in Chicago called About Last Night, which I loved the film, and I love Rob Lowe, but that man had never played 16-inch softball in his life, and all of Chicago almost walked out of the movie. So does that matter when you're watching these movies, though, Hunter, that they look like they can play?
That definitely matters. It's definitely tough to watch someone that, and honestly, Costner, his catch is way better than his swing because, his swing. But I mean, he's not like acting like he's a player. He's normally watching and he's like just trying to hit fungos, and the swing is fine. But his character wasn't like, I'm a major leaguer. But like, if you're like going to be like the major league player or doing that and you don't look like you know what you're doing, that's tough. But I feel like most movies actually do a pretty good job of them looking good. Like Major League was really fun. Obviously those were some of the best ones as a kid as well, and having Bob Uecker and those guys, but they all did a pretty good job as well. And like Charlie Sheen, he was like like baseball was his passion. That was kind of like what got him into the scene, and so Charlie Sheen did a great job as well.
I love 8 Men Out, even though it's about my beloved White Sox throwing the World Series. It used to drive me nuts, Hunter, before the Cubs won the World Series in 2016. Everybody in Chicago was like, oh, the Cubs are cursed. Oh, they haven't won. I'm like, we gave away a World Series on the South Side. I don't want to hear about it. But I think that's another beautifully done movie. Last question I have to ask you, Hunter, is, as I mentioned, I'm a big Chicago White Sox fan. Have you had a chance to kind of follow what they're doing? I think they're the biggest surprise of the season.
Yeah, and I haven't followed it other than like watching many of their games besides just like kind of looking at the stats, like what's making them so good. And I talked to Cece Sabathia, who will be on the broadcast with me as well, about them, and he's like, yeah, they're legit. They have some young guys. Obviously, Vargas having a really good season. Murakami, who I got to see actually break the record in Japan. It was like the one game I went to in Japan was the last game of the season, and Murakami breaks the record of home runs. I was like, this is crazy. How did I get here?
That's
you know,
cool.
it's just like somehow the universe puts me in like the craziest spots with baseball. And we were just on vacation out there. So they are an exciting young team. They have some young pitching. They just called up Hayden Smith, who had a good outing yesterday through 2 innings. I know I got to interview him when he was at Arkansas, but they just they got young talent. I think Venable's done an amazing job of managing them. They can pitch, they can hit, and they're the real deal. They're definitely in the thick of it, obviously leading the Central Division, which is still pretty tight. So I'll be interested to see if they can, what kind of magic they can make happen, but they're playing good ball.
Hunter Pence, thank you so much. The Field of Dreams game is on Netflix Thursday. The Phillies and the Twins. I hope they have enough baseballs because Schwarber might lose all of them in the cornfield. Thank you so much, my friend. I really appreciate talking to you.
Thanks.
Hey, thank you. Thank you both. It was a pleasure.
Don't forget to subscribe and share The Movie of Your Life with Richard Roeper, brought to you by Wayfair Theaters.